All right. Hey there, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well and really excited to talk about all that we're going to be talking about. Just so timely.
Definitely, for sure. And I just always enjoy our conversations. And, I was saying on social media how much I've just appreciated your story. And I love that this is another chance for you to share that story today. And I think others will benefit from it as well.
Awesome.
Great. Well, usually I like to just start by giving some background about why we're here, why we're doing these interviews, and just what it means on the co created side. So, what we're doing at Co Created is trying to be a resource for schools, for teachers, for school leaders, just to give them better information when it comes to professional development and training. So for us, that looks like a platform where we have awesome providers like you who schools can connect with and book services with. It looks like a data dashboard where they can see history across their teachers about their professional learning trends and who's got this training, who's got that training, where are the gaps, where are the needs. And sometimes it also looks like the fun part, which is these interviews where we get to sit down, have a conversation, and just take a more in depth look into the services you offer and just the more human side of it all. So I appreciate you being here for this conversation because I think it's such an awesome resource for school leaders to be able to learn about what you do and why you do it and all of that good stuff. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, I am ready to dig in if you are. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's go for it.
All right, Mike. Well, why don't you just start with giving us your basic one liner, your elevator pitch? What's your name? What do you do in a nutshell?
So, I hate to admit this, but as an entrepreneur, I don't have an elevator pitch. I've never had one. Yeah, they say you need one, and I just no, just I just say I'm Mike. Actually, that's it. I didn't say my last name, but my name is Mike Veny. My title, certified corporate wellness specialist, whatever that means. And basically, I own a company called Mike Veny Inc. And our whole thing is emotional wellness, emotional wellness. And we're all about helping people discover and utilize the gift of emotional wellness. And I want to just say what that means. That's not, I feel good all the time. It
Right.
means learning to work with all your emotions. And that comes from a personal place. And we offer training, continuing education, presentations, and stuff like that.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I am not in the least surprised that you don't have an elevator pitch, just because I know you to be such a genuine person and connection so important to you. So I don't see you as a memorize my lines guy. It's a connect and talk kind of guy. So I think
Well,
it works for you.
well, can I tell you why? Like elevator pitch, I'm really glad we're talking about this right now. It actually goes into the whole conversation.
Yeah,
Mental health stuff and people stuff go hand in hand, by the way.
totally.
You relationships are so important. And I found for me that having an elevator pitch was almost like this like weird way to start a relationship with someone. And it's also like, I don't know if I want to get to know a certain person, right? Some people scare me. So I'm like, oh my God, I just like pitch myself and they want to like, connect. And I'm like, oh, this is weird. So to to avoid that, I actually spend a lot of my time in initial conversations just asking questions to get a feel for who the person is
Sure.
and not even saying much about me. So that's one of the reasons I don't have one.
I love a person that asks good questions. I think that it sounds simple, but it's an exceedingly rare quality when you get into conversation with someone and they ask about you, like I think that's such, you say it like it's just like, oh, well, that's what I do, but it's actually a gift. It's a nice thing to want to get to know someone. Like that's nice.
Yeah, well, thank you. That makes me feel good.
Yeah. Asking good questions is a good quality. So, I would love to hear about just your background, your story. And you said you're a certified corporate wellness specialist. And of course, my world is the education world. So, it's a little bit different than that. But we'll get to all that. I know there's a connection. But talk to me about how you got to be where you are today and how your story, your personal story, plays into that.
Well, I never thought I'd be sitting here talking to you about this when I was younger. In
Sure.
fact, I just wanted to keep it all a secret. I was struggling with
Mm,
my mental health, which often manifests as behavior problems as a child.
yes.
And it was really difficult for me to just hold it together. And, I battled with angry outbursts for a long time, and that got me expelled from 3 schools. hospitalized in a mental hospital 3 times. And trigger warning, I'm going to bring up the sensitive thing, suicide
Mm.
attempts. And that's a very real thing. And it made it just very difficult to get through my school years because of these challenges. And I never wanted anyone to know about it. And it wasn't until I had another breakdown in 2011 as an adult when someone I was actually asking someone for help. Like I knew she worked in mental health. So it's like, please help me. And she goes, can I hire you to be a speaker for my conference? And I'm like, no, no, you're not listening. I need like help. And she's like, well, can I hire you to be a speaker? And I got angry. But the next day she emailed me and said, I want to do this. And I'm like, maybe I should do this. And that was actually the start of my career right there and this company and all that we do. Because I
Wow.
realized that for me to help train others in the area of mental wellness, it would force me to hold myself accountable to me.
Wow. Yeah. So, wow, there's so much there. Like, I'm just like thinking of you as a student, and I'm thinking about my experience as a teacher. And I've had those students who, like you said, have the outbursts or have these big feelings they don't know what to do with, and that manifests in behavior that's not productive for them or the rest of the learners. And without specific training, I would not have known what to do. And I'm sure other teachers feel that same way. And so, when you look back at your experience as a student, what do you wish your teachers had known about you, about mental health? What do
Ooh,
you think when you look back?
so many different ways to answer this. I wish that they would have seen me as a human. And I know teachers have a lot to manage
Sure.
all at once. Prior to the apocalypse, they had a lot to manage, but even after the apocalypse, it's like so much more. And so I wish they would have been able to see me. I'll never forget there was this one incident. So I was a chair thrower, like that was me. And there was one time where I'll never forget. I was in special education for my behavior in 5th grade, and I went to go pick up my desk to throw it at my teacher, which sometimes I tried to do. I'm not happy about that, but it's the truth. And she came up to me, looked me in the eyes, and she started tearing up.
Wow.
And she said, Mike, I'm disappointed in you. And I just put the desk down. Yeah. There was
Wow.
no, yeah. It just, I'll never forget that. Ever
Right.
forget that. And, other teachers tried to, yell at me, send me to the office or whatever, but that's one I'll never forget. And, I realized that teachers aren't therapists, they don't have mental health training. And it's so interesting because the same conversation is going on in workplaces with managers and supervisors that their employees that work under them are coming to them for, mental health stuff, and
Wow.
nobody knows how to respond. So we are in a very unique time where it's important to have tools to help someone else who might be struggling, but also better tools for helping yourself.
Definitely. Definitely. And it is an interesting time. And the positive of that is that I feel like we're talking about it more. I think the conversation is a little more out in the open. Like I heard you say, like when you were a student, you wanted to keep it a secret, your struggles, and there was, I'm putting words in your mouth, but maybe shame, some shame around it.
Oh yeah.
And I'm hoping that the more we have conversations like this, where people are honest about their story and their experience, that it opens the door. Like that honesty begets more honesty, vulnerability begets more vulnerability. So these conversations matter so much in the workplace, in the school, wherever.
They do, and it's not easy to be vulnerable, especially at work. And going back to teachers for a moment here, there's all these pressures now, right? Like what's in your curriculum, what books are there. This parent is mad now because their kid's not getting the grade that they think they should have. So there's all these like pressures. And so when we're in situations like that, we don't want to be vulnerable. We want to be strong and get through it and show strength. So sometimes we see admitting that we might be struggling as as a no-no in a situation like that. And I think it's important to understand that educators throughout the world have been struggling over the past few years with their mental and emotional health. More than 50% are leaving the profession like right now. And
Yeah. You're
that's scary. I think it's Florida that because of all the teacher shortages is just basically like I don't want to put words in their mouth, but like giving a degree to anybody to teach. And again, we're in a very interesting time, and this is why it's really important. that teachers, administration, and students all take care of themselves. And so that's why the work that I'm doing is important in my mind, because it's helping people with all of that.
Definitely. It's so important. And whew, don't get me on my soapbox about what's going on with the deprofessionalization of teachers. Whew, that is a whole topic. Um, I'm thinking about this concept around vulnerability, and mental health is it's a vulnerable thing. And I always say like it's a gift when we share these conversations with each other. How would you say school leaders or organizational leaders can create the kind of safe space for those conversations to happen? Like, how would you describe an environment where you would have felt safe to be your whole self and have those conversations, whether, as a student or in the workplace?
One of the challenges that I see in school cultures a lot, and this is not every school, is that it's a culture of everybody's got to be the smartest person in the room. And I'm talking about the teachers. And it's just like they're trying to outdo each other on basic decisions, and that becomes problematic. It's just this ego show, and like usually it happens for me when they're hiring me to come in, and like, oh, this person has to look at the contract. No, but this person wants to see it because they think this. And it's just like, what is wrong with you people? Like, come on. Like, and
Don't call us out like that, Mike.
well, I'm being honest, because I think the important thing about being a teacher is also being a learner. And I
Yes.
think in school environments where people who are in charge show up as learners, not just teachers, more gets done together. More
Mhm.
gets done, and you can feel safe just being yourself. But I think in terms of creating the environment, it's really important to examine the culture of your school. So in any workplace, all these workplaces now have all these benefit packages, give you the Headspace app. But if the environment is toxic, like, so what? So I think it's really
So
important. There's so many assessments out there that you can take to get an assessment of what the climate in your school community really is. And warning to any of you watching, it's going to get really honest, you
Mm,
know. And one thing I remind people is, you might not be half as bad as you thought you were, but you might not be half as good as you thought you were either.
that's the give and take. Yeah, that culture piece, just we can't say enough about how valuable that is. I feel you. Like I have a collaboration coming up with a colleague, and I do some advising for schools on professional development strategy. Like how do you design a plan for your teachers to grow throughout the year? But you can have the best plan ever, but if your culture isn't ready, you're not ready. That growth that you want to see in your teachers, it's not going to happen without that culture there. So I love that idea about looking deeply into it, giving a survey or however else to get that feedback and just open those conversations up so that you can get that toxicity out of the culture and begin to grow, begin to be vulnerable, begin to have the conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I think is really important right now is administrators doing a better job of supporting teachers.
Yes.
All the expectations that they have of teachers and lesson plans and all this stuff, it's really important that any administrator listening does the best that they can to take things off their teachers' plates.
That's right.
And that might seem very hard, maybe in certain states where you have to meet certain standards and stuff, but it's so important because ultimately the role of the teacher is, children can actually learn. So
Right.
we need teachers at their best.
It's right. It's like how can we remove every barrier in the way, every obstacle in the way? Like that was, my job as an administrator. Like how can I make sure my teachers have everything they need and remove any barriers as I can so that they can do that amazing job of teaching students. And hearing you talk, I'm just reminded of like the reason I named my company Co-Created. I don't know if I've told you this story, but that is kind of my education philosophy. It's who I was as a teacher, it's who I tried to be as a leader, but I think of education as a co-creation, that me and the students, we are co-creating the learning path together. So, that moment you shared with that teacher telling you like she had tears in her eyes and was disappointed, like what I heard you say in that moment was like it was such a shared human experience. Like y'all were in it together, and it's those magical moments I think that are everything. And when it comes to leadership, same thing. Like as a leader with your teachers, you are co-creating this path together, and I think the more we can partner with each other that way, the better off we all are.
Yes, and it's very difficult to do. And Oh gosh, this is such a great conversation. I really appreciate you having this with me. You know, one of the things that I talk about in one of my courses, Fill Your Cup, The Exhausted Educator's Guide to Emotional Wellness, which is also a book, is the importance of utilizing professional learning communities, teachers,
Yes.
whatever that looks like, informally or formally in your school. But one thing I remind people, and this is true, I think, of lots of areas of life, not just in education, from the moment we're little till we finish school, we're taught to get the answer right by ourselves. If you and I are in the group together and you're not pulling your weight, it's like, no, I just got to do what I got to do. Get the answer right. You're rewarded for being the best, having the answer. Then we're thrown into the workplace and told we got to play well together. The skills don't always translate. And so I think it's important to understand that, there's a time and place to be the one that knows the right answer, and time and place to say, let me bring in others and surrender my ego, which is very hard for all of us to do. And I'm
Oh,
speaking
yeah.
from my own experience, to really work for the greater good.
Right. Right. So, on that note, when schools bring you in, when they do say, all right, we're ready to bring someone else in, get a fresh perspective, what does that work look like? Like, you're not a teacher, Mike. What are you doing in schools?
Yeah, you're just calling me out. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a teacher at all. And I was hesitant to create materials for educators because one of the things that I've always appreciated about coming from a family of educators is you're all about credibility.
Mm,
Who are they? What degree do they have? And all this stuff. But I learned that everyone in my company was basically an educator at some point in
wow.
their career. Yeah, it was the weirdest thing. And when I told them about, educator mental health, they were all in on it. Like, oh, we need to talk about this. So we basically surveyed educators throughout the country on what's really on their minds. Like one of the things that we
Yes.
learned was through our surveys that it wasn't just student mental health that they were worried about, but student anger.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that was a very interesting thing, and where some of their overwhelm was. And so from that, we put together a course for educators and just a whole bunch of material. And so when I come into schools, I speak about my own journey, but I also talk about tools that they can use and bring back to the classroom to help themselves and to help their students. Like, for example, one of the things we talk about is fire drills. Well,
Okay.
you know what a fire drill is, right?
I mean, I think I do, but it
Right.
sounds like there's a twist here.
No, no. The fire drills. The purpose of fire drills was that we knew what to do in the event, God forbid, there was a fire to
Got
happen.
it.
We went through these steps. But one thing that's happening with educators is people are reaching their breaking point where they just can't take it anymore. Everyone's reaching their breaking point. And usually it's a scenario that gets you to that breaking point or a certain person that does. Knowing that, educators can create what we call a coping ahead plan. We talk about coping skills, but coping ahead is planning ahead, like fire drill, for
Yes.
situations that might be an explosion. For example, parent teacher night. Okay. Maybe there's a certain group of parents that's going to be just problematic and send you spiraling. Knowing that in advance, you can put plans in place for yourself to, number one, have certain language to use with them to try to diffuse the situation, a friend you can talk to afterwards to kind of just calm down and decompress.
I like that.
Maybe an exercise you need to do. So thinking of it like fire drills is really important. So we go through in our program one of the sections how to create step by step your own coping ahead plan, and you can use it in any area of life.
Gosh, and just going into a situation with that plan in place, even just now thinking about going into a situation with the plan in place eases my anxiety.
Yeah,
Just having the plan is like, whew, I'm prepared. I can do this. I know what to do as best as we can. Of course, there's things outside our control, and accepting that's part of, I'm sure, the coping ahead plan. Acknowledging like there are parts of it I can't control, but I have prepared as best as I possibly can. And now I'm going to enter into this shared human experience as prepared as I can be. So I
right.
love that idea.
Yeah, and you start to feel the weight ease off of you mentally around certain things. Another thing that's in there that we talk about is do you deal with yourself if you feel like you failed a student who might be
Mm,
struggling. So let's say you had a student in school who was struggling with their mental health, but they end up dying by suicide. Or someone who you tried to just empower and encourage, but they end up on the streets with a substance abuse situation. A lot of times a teacher will really feel bad about that, like they failed a student. And
right.
I think it's really important to remind anyone who's listening who's been in that situation or knows someone who is that you never know the effect that your support had on a student. even if something tragic happened because of their own challenges. So it's
Right.
important to know that. And I bring in my own experience of being a mental health speaker. I do these presentations and I don't know who I help, but sometimes I might hear something, sometimes I might not. But the key is trusting that the results of your support you might never see in this lifetime
Mm,
is so important. We are a validation culture, right? We're hoping that like you put likes on this live stream, and if you're watching it, please like give us likes. We like those validation, right? Jen and I need it right now, but I think it's important to know that when it comes to certain things like supporting students, dealing with a student who's struggling, that you might not see the results of that, but that doesn't make the work any less important.
that's right. That's right. I mean, education is the ultimate long game. We are making these investments for these short blips of time that we hope go on to be something. And just sometimes I wish the people leading the country and would recognize the power of the long game that is education, that we can't always make magic in 180 days, but the impact we make during that time, and then the next teacher, and then the next teacher, and then the next teacher, that adds up. Like it's a long game, not a short game. It's important.
Yeah, I remember I think I was in 10th grade. It was my third mental health hospitalization. And in the mental hospital, I mean, I was there for like 6 months, and they have a school or a teacher in the hospital for all of us. And I was just so down and frustrated with my mental health. Like,
Hmm.
I keep ending up back in the emergency room of the mental hospital. Like I failed. I felt like a failure. And I remember like she looked at me and said, "You never fail until you stop trying." And it hit me. I get emotional as I share that because it helped me turn some things around, and I realized, no, we got to keep going and trying.
Right.
And that was a moment right there that she will never know about. I mean, I don't even know her name, or if I could find her, I totally would, say thank you. But yeah, that was a powerful moment. So that's why when it comes to supporting students and the little things that you do, it's easy to get frustrated and say this is going nowhere, but you never get to see the results, and that's also the beauty of the work that you do.
It is. You just got to let go and let it be.
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing that about your experience. You've talked openly about experiences in a mental hospital or with suicide. And I just really appreciate you bringing that stuff to the table because it's such a hard thing for people to talk about because of there's such stigma around it. And
Yeah.
I know that that's a word that I've seen you use in your work a lot around transforming stigma. Talk
Yeah.
to me a little more about what that means. What does it mean to transform stigma and how can we do it better in schools?
Oh, great question. That's the title of my book. I should know what it's about, right? Let me think about that for a second. Stigma is defined as the mark of shame,
Hmm.
shame that we carry. And we do that when it comes to mental health for two reasons in my research and my opinion. One is that mental health challenges are confusing, complex, and frustrating. So, like when years ago, I was working out and I hurt my wrist in the gym. Rest 2 days, ice it. It's either a sprain, a strain, or a broken wrist. Nobody wakes up and goes, "Oh, I'm depressed today. I should talk to someone." No, like someone usually has to confront you, and
Oof.
you're resistant.
Mm.
So mental health challenges are confusing, complex, and frustrating. That's number one. We don't like things that are confusing, complex, and frustrating. Even like
Nope.
2020, if a child comes to you in 10 years and said, "We learned about 2020 in school. Can you explain what happened?" How the heck are you going to explain 2020? Like, it's stressful to think about, right? So,
Talk
so
about complex.
right, that's one of the reasons for it. And the other reason is no one likes to feel like the weird one. And
Yeah.
that starts in kindergarten when the kindergartners call each other weird. They're figuring out who's in the group and who's not in the group, and no one wants to feel like that. And the key to transforming it is really three things. It's number one, just self care. And self care, let me just clarify what that is. It's anything that you do for your health when you're not in the presence of a medical professional.
Okay. I like that definition.
Forget the whole massage thing. No, if you brush your teeth, that's self care. Like,
Mm.
it's what you do for your health. And the key is to take bite-sized steps to get better at it. And we talk about in our workshop, self-care you can do no matter how busy you are. You can do it while you're busy, actually. There are
Right.
things you can do. In addition, it's also having the conversation and being willing to have the conversation about that. But it actually starts back with you. And sometimes that conversation is best done in therapy and counseling.
Hmm.
Therapy and counseling, a lot of people see as the place you go to when you're struggling and it's really bad. Yes, but it's also a place you go to if you want to grow and be the best person
Sure.
you can be. And there's like what you know about yourself and what you don't know about yourself and what you didn't know that you didn't realize that you didn't know. That's what therapy and counseling give you. So it's an opportunity. Those two things right there are things that people can do to transform the stigma. And it's a repetition over time that will make it better.
Absolutely. Proactive therapy versus reactive therapy is like the best. Like you
Yeah.
said, it's about growth. Like you get to know yourself. You get to, I mean, that alone is transformative, getting to deeply know yourself. Like what a gift and an opportunity, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, and sometimes in therapy, like, I know for me, like, I'm busting out laughing the whole time. It's not you're not just sitting in there crying, and for those of you that might be watching that are thinking, "Okay, well, I've been to therapy before, I don't wanna have to share my whole story again," that's usually a sign that you need to go back and share your story again.
hmm, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So let's see. I'm thinking about your work in schools, and I also know that you are a drummer.
Yes.
Talk to me about drumming and what the heck that has to do with mental health and your journey.
Drumming, I started in 5th grade, and I played in school, and it was the only thing that calmed me down mentally and centered me. And so it became my medication, and so I became a professional drummer, not just because I wanted to be a musician, but because it was my coping tool. So why
Yeah.
not get paid for my coping tool? And so I'm still a drummer to this day in New York City, doing small little things here and there. But I actually do drumming in the workplace now with people because it allows people to experience something that I experience with it. It's the only like mental health medication you can share with other people, right? And so it also is an opportunity to have the experience of coming together and bonding that a lot of people in this world don't have, especially after COVID, since we've been so lonely. Even in person, people are just lonely. And so
Right.
the cool thing about the drumming is that people sit in a circle, they get to bond with each other, but they also get to laugh and see each other's face. And there's something about laughter and seeing someone else's face that just like brings your shell down, which actually breeds trust.
Yes.
And so that's what I do with drumming now because it's so important. And also, we live in a society where, like, if you get angry, it's like, okay, you need to get some coping skills. But sometimes you need to get physical, not in a way that's hostile or violent. I'm not saying that. And drumming is a great outlet for that because you get to use your hands
Totally.
and hit stuff and make cool sounds and be silly.
You get to hit stuff in a really productive,
Yeah,
safe, happy way. Like
yeah,
what could be better than that?
in a legal, ethical way. Yes.
And I love that you said too about, I mean, I'm imagining like a group of people drumming together, how you get to laugh together, you get to kind of like play off of each other a little bit. And we don't get those opportunities enough in school or in the workplace to just be light with each other in that way, right? Like that levity is such an antidote for all the heaviness that we're shouldering as educators.
I did a workshop for educators actually with the drumming a few months ago, and it was on inclusion. And I didn't say anything about inclusion. I just said, this is my workshop for inclusion. And we just did the drumming. And I actually asked them questions like, how did you feel when you first came in the room? And they all got to go around and answer. And, how did you feel at the end?
Yeah.
And they realized through their own conversation where they felt included and excluded and almost answered the whole like workshop for themselves in conversation of what they
Wow.
could bring. And that's kind of how I do my workshops. It's not about I'm a participant in half the workshops. It's about them leading themselves because oftentimes, as you know, the answer is already within us. You know,
Totally.
we're willing to go there.
I mean, that's again a lesson learned in therapy for me. The answer is often within you, you know?
Yeah.
So you do these drumming workshops. You told me about your work with the Fill Your Cup course and book. Are there any other workshops or keynote presentations that our educator audience should know about that you do?
Yeah, transforming stigma in the classroom,
Great.
how to find peace in times of uncertainty. And they're all on my website, www.mikeveny.com. And I am looking forward to doing more with you, Jen, and co-created. I remember when all this started, and I love how you've grown, and I love your commitment. And that's one of the reasons I've stayed in touch, and I want to do more with you.
Thank you. I so appreciate you saying that because, as you and I both know, this entrepreneur journey is no joke. And any of those words of encouragement are always appreciated. So, yeah, just still over here hard at work trying to be a resource for schools. And I know that you're doing the same for schools and beyond. So, thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I know it is time for us to wrap up. So you did mention your website, you've mentioned your courses. I, of course, will make sure to get this video onto your profile on the CreatED platform so that people can have it. Are there any other places folks can follow along with your work or connect with you?
Sure, YouTube is a great one, and I am the co-host of several podcasts. So you can just type my name in Spotify or whatever you listen to for podcasts and listen to some of those.
Awesome. Do you have any closing words of advice for our teachers as we wrap up today? Any quick tip they can do like tomorrow to support their students' mental health?
Yes, take the time to pause and just check in with yourself today. Just
Yes.
pause, close your eyes, do it for 1 minute, and just check in with yourself. And that's all it needs to be. And maybe bring that into the classroom and have everyone do that for just a whole minute. And you'll be surprised throughout the day, if you do that a few times, how much better you'll feel and get through the day.
That's right. The power of the pause.
Power of the pause.
Thank you, Mike. Well, if you'll hang on for just a second while we close out, I'm going to close our stream for the day. You and I will stay on. Thank you, everybody who was able to tune in. This video will be available as a recording, and we'll catch you next time.